Okay. My name's Jasmine.
My name is Devin.
And my name is Juan.
Okay. So, what are your guys's like initial thoughts of reading the book so far?
I don't know. I like it. I mean, I'm like more towards like the middle of the book, so I'm not really completely done with it. But like my initial thoughts on it, I mean, it's like it's like an interesting read because I don't know. I guess back then, like the doctors or like the medical system is like completely different from what it is now. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like crazy reading about how it was then compared like and then comparing it to now. I don't know. I've been finding it really interesting.
Yeah, it seems like there wasn't a lot of like policies or it's kind of whatever the doctors wanted to do. Um, so it's kind of like it almost seems like the Wild West in a way when it comes in medical terms. Like it just
Yeah,
more or less can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Like there was no informed consent. Like they just told you what they thought you should know, and then that was it.
yeah, and then like they didn't really like thoroughly check the patient
No.
because in the book they would write that the doctor would just write, "Oh, the patient seemed fine. She seems to be happy."
Mm-hmm.
But in some cases that was not the case at all. It was quite the opposite, which I mean, kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
I know what you're saying. It was like I remember just reading a book about where they kept in their notes they said like the same thing over and over again, and then like it wasn't until Henrietta went to the doctor with extreme pain until she got more X-rays,
Mm-hmm.
and then they like changed the tune.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
She
it was
went.
like
She went 4 whole times to the doctor saying something was wrong, that the cancer spread before they like actually did something about it. And like that's what blew my mind because like if they caught it earlier, like they could have probably done something about it.
yeah,
But like they waited so long.
that's what goes to a lot with it, how segregated it was back then.
Yeah.
Um, it's just it's hard to imagine just how segregated it was. Where they didn't have they couldn't go to the local hospital. They had to go 20 minutes away, and I mean that sounded like a lot to us, but that was far away for them.
Mhm.
Being poor and having nowhere else to go,
Right.
and then more or less being taken advantage of when you get there because he had no other options. So it's interesting.
Yeah. I definitely thought it was interesting too that the nurse like kicked out her kids like after the first time they came with Day, like when her cancer came back. And then she was like, "Yeah, you can't bring them here again because it's causing her pain." And I was like, "She's literally dying, and like she can't even see her kids." Like, just
yeah.
Right, she had to go and like look out the window, and
Mhm.
they would have the kids out in like the courtyard or wherever it was, just to
Yeah, to
see.
be playing, but after a while, since the cancer was like spreading, she just got weaker and weaker, and then she just couldn't even like sit up to
Mhm.
look at her kids, which is bizarre to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely heartbreaking just to when I read it. 'Cause just
Yeah, this is
trying to put yourself in anybody's shoes, and the whole story is hard to even think of.
mhm. How did you guys react to her marrying her cousin?
Yeah, it was, I don't know. It was quite strange. I mean, times back then were very strange
I was,
in like regards to that, but
yeah, I
Yeah,
wasn't
I thought
sure if
it
it
was
was like
strange.
more of a, sorry,
Go ahead.
I wasn't sure if it was like more of a time thing or if it was like just their family, but then I read further in the book that the lady that Lawrence marries was like, yeah, it's really just your family. So like that kind of struck me as like why did it start if it was just their family, like I don't know. It was just really weird to me.
yeah, but I still feel like it wasn't. just them. There was definitely more people that did that too. But I think, me personally, I think it was just time, that like era. But
Right. It was more likely to happen in that era than
yeah,
it is now.
then
Even
today,
though it's
yeah,
still,
exactly.
still different, but not uncommon.
What were you guys' reaction to Crazy Joe?
Oh my god.
I mean,
Oh,
okay.
what a crazy guy, huh?
I
He ended
mean,
up stabbing himself to try to stop the marriage between Day and Henrietta, which I found is just ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous, but it's like he must have loved her a lot then, or something. He must have had a. I mean, that's a lot.
yeah, that was pretty crazy.
I can't imagine that being that distraught over somebody to stab myself. But and they are also cousins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Crazy. How do you guys feel about what's his name? George Gay? How do you guys feel about him?
I mean,
He
he's not a good guy. I mean, he kept everything from Henrietta and all of her family in regards to taking samples of Henrietta's cancers and like good cells,
Mm-hmm.
and then just doing research without like her consent at all, which is just not cool.
Yeah.
and he never even mentioned her name. Like in
Yeah,
books that even in the news stories, never even mentioned her name or even the cells. Just like, hey, we have this research going on, and that was kind of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
And there's no like actual proof if he even met her. Like out of all the people that she talked to, only one person that was like his assistant or whatever said that they talked, and like they could have been lying. Like I seriously doubt that he even went and like said anything to her.
yeah.
it is hard to believe. But
I mean, that's what like was hard because Henrietta was just under like anesthetic, so even if she did talk with him, she was off in a different world.
Mm-hmm.
If they actually did talk with her, but
yeah, because he should have ordered some crazy drugs. Like morphine wasn't even working very well.
yeah,
And like shot like straight shots of alcohol to the spine.
Yeah.
yeah, I never heard about that. I was like, what? I feel like, how does that even work?
I feel like if they were gonna get her consent, they should have done it like the day that they took it, because like, she was within her own mind that day. Like they should
Yeah,
have said something then about it.
How'd you guys react to how at first how distrusting the family was to the author Rebecca?
I thought that was definitely interesting. Like I liked that Deborah, after like she knew that she wanted to write a book about her, like she seemed really into it. And then the second time that she called, like she was like, "Oh no, we can't do this until you get my dad and my brother's like consent." And I thought that was definitely, they're a very like private family. Like they said that they didn't even really talk about her after she passed because they thought it was disrespectful to talk about like people who have died, and like it's like I don't know, it's crazy how like secretive they seem.
yeah,
Yeah, it seems like a lot of distrust for. Seemed like they had only people that wanted to talk to them or were about the cells and stuff like that, not really treating like the human aspect. They didn't even ask about that part.
yeah, exactly.
But
Then like when you mentioned her death, how did you guys feel like when, I don't know, when you guys read that, like their family would just like when someone died, they would just have them like in the front by the house, and they'd just leave them out there for like days for people to pay respect.
I remember I underlined that in my book because I thought that was so like what? Like that's
Yeah, I was like, what?
that's also very old school. I mean, they kind of did that like I think in the 1800s where they would um, do that kind of stuff until they buried them, and so they were still continuing that type of tradition, and
mhm,
then
Yeah,
bury them out in the back 40, that kind of mindset.
mhm.
yeah, that's crazy.
They didn't even have enough money to buy her a tombstone, like a head like a, you know what I'm saying, like the
Yeah.
that says your name.
Hmm.
That blew my mind because like these people were making millions of dollars off her cells, and her family couldn't even afford to buy her that.
Right, the simple
Yeah.
things that could be at least like something, and then this like there's nothing happened like at all, and
Hmm.
all the stuff that happened, like they were making all these experiments with the cells. I mean, they sent to I read the um guy was giving the cells away to people in Chile in like the mountains or whatever on horseback, like
Hmm.
India,
Yeah.
the world. These cells were were given to and researched on. You know,
They
because
took her cells up to space too, they said.
yeah, that's right, huh? I
Yeah.
forgot that part.
I just thought it was crazy. I don't know if you guys have read this far. I can't remember like where it's at in the book, but George Gay was like he was irritated because he had given out all the cells so fast, like he didn't even have any of the original cells left, and he wanted to do experiments on those. And he like was angry that like all these people were doing different things that he wanted to do. And I just thought like that was crazy. Like he was the one who gave them out to like everyone that wanted them. And then he got mad that they were using them. Like it blew my mind.
Sounds like jealousy, you
Right.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
like he wanted all the credit, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely seemed like very egotistical,
Yeah.
just only about the experiments, only about they treated everyone as non-human and what they could gain.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of that, did good things. I mean, that's kind of the bad part of it is like there's so many things that those cells have helped.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those catch 22s is like if it didn't happen, a lot of other things may not have happened in medicine.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like in some ways it's good that this happened. It's just it happened in a very tragic way,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just how can we make sure this never happens again?
Mm-hmm.
Like I look
Yeah.
at even a lot of people still don't trust medicine. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people still don't trust scientists because of instances like this.
Yeah. Exactly.
I think that's ironic though that you were talking about like how he was like jealous, but Margaret, which is his wife, kept telling him like you need to write the it's like a journal to talk about like so like everyone knows that he found the cells and like he created them or whatever, and he didn't even want to do it. So like I just think that's ironic because like he was clearly mad like everyone was using his work, but then he didn't want to put the work in to like make it like worldwide known that it was his work.
Yeah. But one thing that kind of just like blew my mind too was like Henrietta like knew about it. Like, well, she obviously didn't know she had cancer, but she knew something was wrong. But she like refused to go get it checked out.
Mhm.
I
I
feel like she could have avoided some of or just some like consequences that she had to go through
Yeah, like
because she just didn't
kept a lot of this
want to
stuff
go
from
to the
her family,
hospital.
right?
Yeah,
Like she didn't tell her even her husband for the longest time.
yeah,
yeah.
that was
Those
crazy to me. She
cousins.
And then like the only time she did tell her family was like her those was it Haiti and her sister or something like some. I think it was them. I can't remember on the top of my head, but she told them, but only because she just couldn't get herself to the hospital anymore by herself. She
Mhm.
was just too weak. So she was like kind of forced to tell someone
I
because
wonder
she was just
why she
couldn't do
didn't
it.
why she wasn't more open. Is that the time of era where we didn't talk about stuff like that, or was there another personal reason why she didn't like wasn't more open about it?
Mhm.
She seemed like it implied that she was very nonchalant about it, like everything's fine until it's not fine.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably like a little bit of both things because I think the time, like a lot of African American women didn't like. They mentioned in the book that they didn't want to go to the hospital unless like they felt like it was necessary and they couldn't do anything about it. So that's when like African American women would go to the hospital to get checked out when they had no other option.
Mm-hmm.
But again, Henrietta was just like such a quiet person. She didn't really like talk about things. If she was like in pain or something, she would just kind of keep it to herself.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it seemed definitely one of those people that's like she'd rather tough it out than actually go seek help.
Yeah,
Might be like a mom aspect too. Like I know like my mom was very much that way when I was younger. Like even if she was sick, like she would make sure I was still okay first, you know? So I feel
yeah.
like she didn't want like her kids to worry about her, you know. How do you guys react to like them carrying around bottles of what was it? Like the radiation.
Oh,
Oh,
radium,
that
whatever
was
for treatment. Yeah, that's
Like carrying it around in
crazy.
my pockets. I was like, in your pockets.
and so many people die from that, got cancer from that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I can't believe that they thought that was like a treatment for it back then.
Yeah. They were like, this is gonna heal everything. So like they just walked around with it in their pockets. I was like, I think you're gonna end up with cancer.
Yeah,
I guess that was more of an unknown thing. I guess they may not have.
yeah, it was more of an unknown, but kind of
What's
crazy that
crazy
even
thing
people
is like
thought about it.
that weren't really known to where they're very well known now. Just like they used to prescribe cigarettes back in the day.
hmm
Now we know it's not at all good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
It's
think it's
also crazy
very,
about how Guy would go around the world and he would have test tubes of the cells in his pocket
hmm
yeah, just like ready to be given out. It's crazy.
to keep him warm. It's like if that happened now, people would be like, "You're crazy. What are you doing with a
right.
vial of you know random stuff in your pocket?"
hmm I also did not very much like how like he started mixing her cells with like chicken cells or like a rat. Like I just thought that was like I get it was like scientific purposes, but like it just seemed like disrespectful to me.
He definitely seemed like I got the feeling of like a mad scientist.
Yeah.
It's like he would like go to like a slaughterhouse and he had a chicken he would
Mhm,
like pull blood from.
mhm.
Yeah,
You know, it just seems
but I mean,
really
I think that's just how they just do tests in general. They have to experiment with different things,
Yeah.
and that's why like sometimes scientists just experiment with animals and then they mix human DNA with like animal DNA to see what they can find. I think that's just how they
Yeah.
just do research. But
yeah. It just seems like how they did the research just seemed
Right.
yeah, it's kind of
because these
crazy.
animals would be
First of
grown up.
all, not even telling their family, not even telling her family about it. Like they had the chance because they didn't even want to do the autopsy. But then he was like, no, like we need to do it because I need to get these cells. But he didn't even tell him that. He was just like, I really suggest we do this and like pushed him to do something he didn't want to do so he could get more cells.
Yeah,
Have you guys gotten to the part where that Ethel lady is like taking care of the kids?
I don't think so.
I
No?
don't think I have either.
Okay, I'll save that for the next time then.
Yeah, but like also another crazy thing that I found interesting was that Henrietta had her first child when she was 14. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
yeah.
Her first child was Lawrence, I think his name was.
Mm-hmm. And like
Because
they said, like, and nobody thought anything of it because her and Day shared a room. And I was like,
yeah.
wow, like, I
All
guess.
right
It
then.
definitely implied like a lot of this stuff was very nonchalant, like it was
Yeah,
normal to them.
yeah.
That's what it seemed
Yeah,
like. Family was a lot of stuff was just normal,
Mm-hmm.
and
yeah. But
Crazy.
then they also got married fairly young too. Henrietta was 20, and I think birthday was 25,
Mhm.
which is, I mean, fairly young to get married, but a little bit fairly young for her to have her first child at 14.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this? Is how much do you think segregation played a role in all of this? Like, do you think that would happen if it was, especially back then, if it was a white person in her shoes? Would you think the same process would have happened?
Yeah.
Oh, definitely not.
Would not have
It would have
taken
definitely been a lot more different.
she was white, or they wouldn't have taken them without consent from her or her family.
Yeah,
And I think the treatment would have been a lot better too.
yeah, she would have gotten taken care of a lot more.
A lot
Mhm.
more proactive about it. Yeah, the doctors
Yeah,
would
than
on it,
than like how African Americans would.
And
So I think, I mean, it played a huge part.
I thought it was interesting that like her first doctor that she went to thought of cancer as like it's either like you have cancer cells but they're not like active cancer cells, or you have cancer and you're going to die. Like there was no like in between during that time. Like, and I thought that was like really crazy too.
Yeah, so like how some doctors also like couldn't tell apart some good cells from like cancer cells back then too, which I was like, how are you a doctor? That's like, what? So many people were so inexperienced with that that they'd have to like go to other doctors to like ask them about their patients, which I found was kind of ridiculous.
I'm very glad we do not live in that world anymore.
True.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that. That's what kind of sparked all this off, was that they are trying to prove certain things, or
Mhm,
about, this whole, like, I guess there's like this national debate of like what cancer really
mhm.
was, benign or malignant. Um, so it's almost like a race to figure out who could um, figure out cancer, more or less,
Yeah.
which is which is noble thinking, but how they went about it was like just
Mhm.
so unethical and wrong.
Yeah.
Seems like. But at the
Also, I
time,
think they mentioned that like 15,000 women were dying each year from like cervical cancer because not many people knew how to treat it, and they would like just kind of tell them like, "Oh, you're fine," but they wouldn't be. And like a lot of people just died because doctors didn't know what they were doing.
Mhm.
yeah, it seems like they treated their patients as experiments rather than patients.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's crazy to think it was only like 70 years ago. Like it seems like a whole different time period. Like if they were still using that kind of like medical like stuff in the 50s, like that's crazy to think of for me anyway.
Yeah, it really wasn't that long ago, and I think that's one of the reasons there's still so many people that don't trust medicine and would rather go and you know seek alternative routes, and rather than trust you know everything happened to a doctor that they had no idea about.
But like if you had an experience like this, I would not trust medicine either.
Right.
yeah,
Like
At the time,
one
they
of
didn't have a choice, though. They just
yeah,
trusted their word. Like, you
yeah.
know, oh, this guy's a doctor, so he knows what he's talking about. But in reality, they were just barely figuring it out.
Hmm. There was one where in the book it said like a guy went in for just like a standard like procedure, and he came out paralyzed because like they did something that like they didn't tell him about. And like I just thought that was crazy. I was like, how can you go in for like, say you're getting like a cyst removed or something, and then you end up
yeah,
paralyzed? Like that would be crazy.
yeah. And then like when they like the doctors treated Henrietta for her cancer, they failed to mention that she would go like infertile, so she wouldn't be able to have any more children.
Mhm.
And I thought that that was very interesting because like Henrietta asked her doctors when she would get better so she could have another child, and then they like told her, and then Henrietta was just in shock because if she would have known that, she probably wouldn't have gotten any treatment.
Mhm.
And what's crazy is that they already had policies about that. Like
Yeah.
it said in the book, like there was already a policy that they were supposed to tell them,
Yeah,
and
and then they
the
just
patient was supposed to have a this was supposed to be allowed in the decision with that
Yeah.
of it knowing.
If it's a side effect like that could like be that big, like they should definitely tell someone. And like I don't know why like policies weren't followed back then, but like it seemed like a lot of policies weren't followed.
well, like again, I think they were followed to like a certain extent, but like how you mentioned about like the segregation and like the color of people's skins, that I think that played a huge role in why she wasn't informed. Because I feel like if she was white, she would have definitely gotten an option like, "Hey, you're gonna become infertile if we do this to you. Do you want to proceed?" So I mean, I don't know. I think just the time back then is just I don't know.
See what else was going on. Let's see. Also the book mentioned about this that dude Alexis Carol with like the chicken heart, like
Mhm.
before
Yeah,
it all happened, like this dude, this scientist, supposedly had an immortal chicken heart,
Or-
oh
mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and like this guy seems pretty wild. Like he,
Yeah, he seemed great because he. I need that highlighted is that Carol died awaiting trial for collaborating with the Nazis. I don't think a
yeah,
Nazi or scientist would be collaborating with a Nazi, especially if he's got like an immortal like chicken heart going on.
Right. And then
Which I thought that was super. Like, what? I was not
I guess it
expecting
turns
that.
out it probably wasn't true. That the cells probably died years ago.
mhm.
Like every year he would like sing happy birthday to him,
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
and he had some. He just seemed like a crazy dude.
yeah.
And then, but then what that led to is um, when guys stuff would come out, the the nation was kind of over like
Mhm.
the mortal cell thing because they like this guy had said all this stuff and it turns out it wasn't true, so they were very distrusting in general about this stuff.
Mhm.
And at least at the beginning of guys research, they were kind of over the immortal
Yeah.
cell thing.
I just think it's sad that like not more people know about this. Like I had no idea
yeah,
about
me neither. I was like, I'm going into like or trying to go into like medical field, and I had no idea about
Mhm.
any of this. I was like, what the? I was in shock because I was like, there's no way doctors would do that.
Right.
But I mean, back then times were different, so I don't know. I was just in shock when I just like read about it. Like
Mhm.
even like the Gila cells, I never heard about them before until now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like if you go to medical field, you should at least they should make them like at some point have a requirement to read this book
Right.
or about the events that happened.
And it's actually kind of crazy how like we're only like now finding out. Imagine like how many people out there just don't even know at all because like it was never talked about.
Mhm.
And I feel like it's like a really big, important part of medicine is because of Henrietta and herself.
Mhm.
And it's just like not talked about at all.
Yeah. So much stuff came out of her cells. Like I just feel like it should be more known, more widely known.
Yeah, and it's just not. It's I don't know. It's just like really kind of crazy to think about because well, like without her cells, medicine wouldn't have advanced so rapidly as it has.
Mhm. Yeah. I think it's been 30 minutes if you guys wanna Unless you had anything else to say.
No, I think we've kind of hit most of the major points of what we read so far.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like, how far deep are you guys into the book? So I'm only like just about to get halfway through it.
I just got to like 100.
I'm
Yeah, I'm like near there too.
like 150 something.
Oh, okay.